The metallic clash of shields echoes like thunder. The sun reflects on hundreds of helmets, and the cry of a centurion tears through the air, "Advance!" To the eyes of onlookers, Rome seems eternal, a living wall, perfect and indestructible. But what if I told you that behind this image of glory lay a suffocating truth? Men reduced to cogs, trained to exhaustion, punished without mercy, and forced to march into wars from which they might never return. The spectacle of power hid freezing nights in flimsy tents, empty stomachs, and shattered dreams. The Roman legion was not only glory, it was sweat, blood, and a life that no longer belonged to them. It was the greatness of an empire built upon the pain of its own soldiers. Are you ready to uncover the real price of living inside the most feared war machine in history? If this revelation has already shaken you, imagine what is yet to come. So don't wait. Hit the like button now so this story reaches more people, and subscribe to the channel to march with us in this legion of history lovers. Only then will you make sure you don't miss the dark and surprising next chapters of ancient Rome. The road to the legion almost always began with poverty. Young peasants, landless and hopeless, saw in the army not only an escape from misery, but the chance to eat every day and perhaps earn citizenship after 25 long years of service. Recruitment never asked about dreams, only endurance. From the very first days, the body was put to the test. Endless 30-kilometer marches under the scorching sun, wooden swords heavier than iron ones, ditches dug in ground as hard as stone. Blisters on the feet, raw hands, and sleepless nights were only the beginning. Every command was given with the cold reminder, your life is no longer yours, it belongs to Rome. Slowly, these youths ceased to be individuals. They became pieces of a greater organism where disobedience cost dearly and discipline was engraved into the flesh. But what truly transformed these ordinary men into an almost invincible war machine? At the height of the empire, between the 1st century BC and the 2nd century AD, the legion was the heart that made Rome beat and conquer the world. Divided into cohorts, trained to perfection, every soldier moved as if he were but a single muscle of the same body. The sound of sandals striking stone echoed like thunder. The gleam of standards with the golden eagle reflected the power of a city that believed itself eternal. Discipline was so rigid that formations like the testudo, a wall of overlapping shields, seemed unbreakable, defying arrows and stones alike. To the enemy, facing a legion was like confronting a moving fortress. But to the soldier, every victory had a price. Blood spilled on distant fields, bodies left without graves, and memories of friends who never returned. Rome grew in glory, but within the legion, the weight of pain grew as well. If even in glory there was suffering, what was daily life? Like for these men away from the battlefield, the life of a legionary was not made of battlefield glory alone. The real burden lay in the everyday grind. At dawn, before the sun warmed the tents, dry orders already rang out. Dig trenches, raise walls, build the roads that would connect Rome to the farthest corners of the empire. Every stone carried, every stake driven was as compulsory as handling the gladius. Meals were meager, hard bread, barley porridge, and watered-down wine. Nights were cold, spent in leather tents that barely shielded against rain or wind. And if someone failed, discipline was unforgiving. A delay could mean lashes before comrades. A collective revolt meant the dreaded decimation, where 1 in 10 was executed as an example. More than warriors, they were laborers of the empire, molded to obey. But even this iron machine would begin to show cracks when Rome's economy started to collapse. The machine that sustained Rome began to groan under its own weight. The empire expanded beyond what it could feed, and the legions, scattered across the edges of the known world, relied on supply convoys that often never arrived. Soldiers endured days of hunger, waiting for grain from Africa, wine from Hispania, or meat from Gaul. To maintain such enormous armies, emperors raised taxes, crushing peasants and merchants. By the 3rd century, the crisis became unbearable. Coins were debased, salaries lost value, and many legionaries were paid in wheat, cheap wine, or even empty promises. The legion, once the empire's pride, began to rot from within. No longer was it just physical strain that crushed them, but the realization that Rome could no longer sustain them. If the economy crumbled, what would happen when politics and generals began using the legion as a weapon for personal ambition? If the economy weakened Rome, politics corroded its soul. Ambitious generals learned to use the legions as currency of power. It was enough to proclaim themselves emperor before their troops, and the empire plunged into yet another civil war. Loyalty, once sworn to the Senate or a rightful emperor, shifted to whichever commander was in charge, creating a cycle of betrayal and bloody disputes. Meanwhile, the frontiers stretched beyond endurance. In Germania, Dacia, and Britannia, small garrisons fought isolated, surrounded by enemies and with no reinforcements in sight. The common legionary no longer knew whom he fought for: Rome, the Senate, Caesar, or merely survival. Glory seemed far away, replaced by the burden of senseless battles fought for ambitions that never belonged to the soldiers. Yet, in the hearts of these men, the greatest enemy was not the barbarian's sword. It was the constant fear that walked beside them. Inside the legion, there was something no training could erase: fear. It lingered in every step, in every shadow of the Germanic forests, where ambushes could erupt at any moment. To march against the swift cavalry of the Parthians, or feel the rain of arrows from Numidian archers, was to live with the certainty that death might strike without warning. Many soldiers buried comrades in haste, without rites, covering them with cold earth before marching on. The scars were not only on their bodies but on their souls. Insomnia, nightmares, and hollow eyes revealed traumas no one dared confess. Discipline crushed any sign of weakness, turning fear into blind obedience. Survival meant silent endurance, knowing the next battle could be the last. But it was not only emotions that would test the legion. The myth of Roman invincibility itself would be shattered by history. The illusion of Roman invincibility began to collapse in events that scarred history forever. In 9 AD, in the dark Teutoburg forest, 3 entire legions were annihilated by the Germans, ambushed in hostile terrain that turned discipline into despair. Centuries later, in 260, Emperor Valerian was captured alive by the Persians, an emperor in chains, an unthinkable humiliation for Rome. Then, in 378, at the Battle of Adrianople, the Goths crushed the Eastern Roman army, proving that tactics once invincible were not eternal. Each defeat did more than cost territory. It eroded the morale of soldiers who began to realize that Rome could bleed, and bleed it did. The myth of the unbreakable wall shattered before their eyes. But the final blow was still to come. When the very heart of the empire stopped beating, the year was 476 AD. The young Romulus Augustulus, last emperor of the West, was deposed by Odoacer, a barbarian leader who didn't need a colossal army to end centuries of history. For the legionaries, however, the fall had been felt long before. Wages delayed or unpaid, cities plundered before their eyes, generals selling loyalty for local power. The gladius, once Rome's symbol, rusted without purpose, and the golden eagle standards lay in the mud. Many veterans once feared now wandered as mercenaries, serving whoever paid the most. The legion, once an iron wall, was now a shadow of itself. There was no grand explosion, only a slow, painful silence. The heart of Rome was corroded until it ceased to beat. Yet even after the fall, something of the legion survived. a legacy that echoes to this day. Even after Rome's fall, the legions left indelible marks on the world. Roads raised by their hands still cross continents. Fortresses became cities. Their discipline inspired military manuals that shaped modern armies. What died were the anonymous bodies of men who gave their lives for a Rome that no longer exists. What remained was the idea that order, training, and sacrifice can change the course of history. But the cruel truth is that inside the legion, glory came at the highest price, life itself. These soldiers did not fight only against external enemies, but against hunger, fear, and the crushing weight of being an iron cog in an insatiable machine. Rome fell, but its scars still breathe among us. For you, which event truly symbolizes the fall of Rome? Write it in the comments and subscribe to the channel to receive more epic stories like this one.